Hey guys, what's up? It's Ripe again. In today's video, a crazy homeowner association and their private police force seized my farm property and tried to kick me off my land. I am not even part of the HOA. They beat me up and intimidated me to make me join their cult. Here is why you never mess with a farmer. Let's dive right into the story. The HOA I live in has gotten so out of control that I don't know if I would even call it that anymore. It is just extremely corrupt and acts almost like a gang where they are just shaking down homeowners for money. I don't know if this is happening anywhere else, but here in South Africa, I did not know that most neighborhoods even had HOAs if you looked back even like 10 years. That could just be me though, so if I'm wrong, please let me know if other places have HOAs that have gone crazy with power like this. I should not even be having to talk about their harassment because I never joined the HOA in the first place, but for them, that did not seem to matter. I was not the only person at first that did not want to be part of the HOA and assumed that saying no was a simple and easy solution. They bullied homeowners and caused problems until they joined. For example, they would dump garbage on lawns, destroy mailboxes and throw eggs, etc. Then they would tell the people that the HOA could protect them against this if they just joined. It was simple gang protection tactics, so they were paying the HOA money to avoid their house being attacked by the HOA. And Ripe Stars, I gotta say, that almost does not sound like a gang, but rather than the mafia. I can certainly see some similarities there. I was not easy to intimidate though, and they left me and my farm alone for a while. Eventually I was in their targets and they were going to try and do everything they could to convince me to join. None of their usual tactics worked on me though, mainly because I was on a farm. If they made a mess, it was nothing to me compared to the mess I find in the barn and chicken coops. Personally, I don't have a mailbox and I use a slot in my door instead because I find it easier, and if they try to throw eggs, they know I have plenty more than they do. Still, it was not as easy as I was making it seem because they were determined to make my life as difficult as possible. One thing a farmer needs is sleep at night, so they turned their cars on my property and turned the bright lights on. That was not a fun time and I had to get out of bed and basically chase them away from my property. Other times were scarier, like the day they showed up to talk about joining the HOA while all holding cricket bats. One look at my gun put an end to that idea though. Finally, they just started sending me letters in the mail, which I did not really have, about owing them dues, and I just ignored all of them. I never joined, so they could not trick me into giving them my money for no reason. More came as well as fines for not paying my non-existent bills on time. I know that during this story I kept saying the HOA was doing these things, and that is true, but it was a separate kind of group within the HOA. They were considered HOA police and they were privately hired, probably using residents' money to bully and persuade people to pay. When I did not give them money for long enough, these fake policemen came to my farm in the middle of the night. I then went outside to see what was going on and was tackled to the ground before I could do anything else. Me, get the hell off of me! What do you think you're doing? HOA person, we are under HOA orders to seize this farm property and evict you for lack of payment. Me, this is my land, I'm not part of the stupid HOA and I own this property. That was as far as I got into what would have been a longer rant when I was beaten up and literally dragged off of my property. They put a chain and lock around my gate and even in my front door so that I could not get back in. I was angrier than ever before and for the first time a little scared of the HOA and what they were capable of. They took away my farm and I was not gonna just sit by and let it happen. It's not the most urban area, as you can imagine, so the legal system was not gonna be fast. And it was not like I could just walk a block over to some legal office. By now, I was homeless for a while, and if it was not for some animal groups forcing the HOA to unlock the gates so they could come and take the animals temporarily, they might have died. I was sleeping on people's couches, even in a barn at one point. The HOA police one day, off the record of course, pointed it out to me that if I was part of the HOA and paid my dues, then they might be able to help me keep my property. It was all just a tactic and I was fed up letting them get away with it. After months of waiting, I was able to take them to court about the entire situation. I gave testimony about everything from the childish things to the fact that I was beaten up and removed from my own property. The issue with the assault was that I did not go to a doctor that night and had no proof that I was hurt or the exact people that did it. The eviction, though, was a little bit easier to prove and punish them for. Heck, they even put a notice on the door for the eviction signed by the HOA president himself. The judge had to explain how illegal it really was for the HOA to have their own private police force because, surprise surprise, it's very illegal. Private security is fine, but HOA using money for their own private police is not. I did not care about looking into the legal difference, but I guess there was one. Also, the biggest thing the judge wanted to see was the paperwork from them showing that I signed up to be a member. They did not even think to fake anything, though they just told the judge that they did not have anything in hand. He asked me if I was a member and I told him that I never joined, and despite them asking multiple times and threatening me, I still refused. They did not have a leg to stand on by the time the judge was finished throwing out sentences for what happened. Based on other things I read, I thought I was gonna get money and be rich, or they were going to get sent to jail. Instead though, they were just forced to get rid of the fake police and pay a heavy fine on top of that. They also had to let me back on my property and not pull another stunt on me like they had in the past. Finally, they were forced to pay for my home expenses in the time that I was not allowed on the property. I owed the farm though it was just a small amount of money in taxes. The only good thing that came out of it all was that they went broke from poor financial management on top of the fines they had to pay. They could not actually afford to stay an HOA, and the people a part of it seemed to slowly disappear out of the neighborhood. I think technically speaking our neighborhood is still listed as an HOA, but there is simply nobody running it and nobody is paying a cent towards it. So they were not shut down, but basically ran themselves into the ground with money that was really meant to help the homeowner stay bullied. Not the best ending, but please know, if your HOA hires private police to harass you, I think that is illegal no matter what country you are in, and you should tell somebody. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I suppose the reason why there are no bigger consequences for the HOA in this story is that OP could not really prove what the HOA did to him, because obviously they didn't admit it and he did not have video footage or anything, so that's why the consequences were rather small. However, in the end, the OP more or less got rid of the HOA, so that is a good thing. The next one is titled Karen Revenge at Subway. So I worked for Subway a while back and always took on people's shifts because people are lazy and I like money. One day I got a call from a girl, I will call her Gertrude or Gertrude, I'm not exactly sure how that can be an American name, who I worked with at another store, asking me to cover for her the following day because she sprained her ankle. Anyway, I was scheduled to work at the same time as her, but promised I would do my best to find someone to cover for her. Unfortunately, the only person who was not working or was unavailable was the biggest F-up in the store. Karen seems fitting. So I reached out to Karen and told her Gertrude's predicament and that she was scheduled for a 6-hour shift which followed mine. I told her I'd stay and cover her shift if she worked the 4-hour shift for Gertrude. I was actually surprised when Karen said yes. I called Gertrude back to tell her the good news and all was well in the universe. The next morning, 2 hours before Gertrude's shift started, she called me all concerned asking if I knew anyone else that could cover the shift. I asked her what happened to Karen and she said Karen texted her saying that she cannot make it. I was pissed. I texted Karen and asked why she couldn't go and she said she did not have a ride. I told Gertrude, who then offered to pick up Karen and drop her back off. I texted Karen to tell her Gertrude was down to drive her, and all I got back was, "Nah, I'm good." I was so freaking mad, especially since I was the one who came up with the bright idea to give Karen any resemblance of confidence. I apologized profusely and Gertrude said she would figure something out. Turns out she ended up working for 2 hours on a jacked up ankle before her manager came in to send her home. When I was almost done with my shift, Karen texted asking, "Can you still cover my shift?" Any other day I would have said yes without hesitation, but she made me look bad and made a poor girl go to work on her feet with a busted ankle, so I waited until half an hour before her shift started and responded, "Nah, I'm good." Karen then shows up pissed as hell and I didn't say a word to her. I sent Gertrude a screenshot of the convo and she was super grateful and said I made her day. Does this make me an Avenger or a Revenger at least? And yeah, Ripe Stars, I would say that could certainly count as petty revenge. Either way, let me know what you think about this story and if it was revenge or an Avenger in the comments. The next one is titled, Don't Do These Shenanigans With Me. So today my GM got the pettiest revenge on some rude-ass bar guests and it was so satisfying. A group of guys sit at the bar and ordered some burgers. This one guy neglects to tell the other bartender that he wanted to add bacon and pulled pork on his sandwich. The bartender asked if he wanted the stuff on the side or a new burger, and he said a new burger, but he still wanted to eat the one he had. No problem. He explained he would have to pay for both burgers and said it was fine. When it comes time to pay, the bartender cashed out his tab with the card on file, with his permission, and when he got the bill he was mad he was charged for 2 burgers. The other bartender explained that he had to pay for both because that is what he asked for and that this other burger was being boxed in the window. He made a scene about it, saying he did not want the new burger now and wanted a refund. Our bar manager deleted the payment and gave him his new check with the one burger that he ate on it. He paid in cash for the new check but left like $5 short of his total. Unlucky for them, our GM saw the entire thing go down. The guy who did not pay his tab all the way walked out before the other guys that were sitting. They also happened to be wearing their work shirts for a lawn care / sodding business with a phone number on it. The other bartender said he did not mind paying the $5, but my manager said F that and called the dude's boss. Told him that he behaved very rudely and shorted his tab, to which that guy's boss replied, "That mother trucker!" Within 5 minutes the guy came back in with the $5 he shorted. So the long story short, if you're gonna short your tab, don't do it in your uniform with your boss's phone number on the back. And the next one is titled, Car Revenge. So yes, as you will see, I'm a chick nursing student. I'm also 30, a military vet, army, and have always done 90% of the work on my vehicles. The only things I cannot do are balance tires, I don't have the tools, and some of the large work that requires things like cherry pickers and whatnot. Again, I don't have the tools. So, like any good vehicle owner whose vehicle has sat for a long period of time without being driven, after getting back from a 6-month mobilization that left my little Toyota SR5 truck sitting in dry storage, I went through and did maintenance. I checked and replaced my fan belts, air filters, spark plugs, oil and fuel filters, did an oil change and radiator flush, checked the battery and connections, checked my brake pads and alignment, swapped out my winter tires for summer tires, cleaned out my truck and replaced my winter survival gear with summer survival gear because yes, that's a priority where I lived. And last but not least, I added injector treatment to my fuel tank, filled my tank and took my truck to have the tires balanced by a Les Schwab tire place. Now, because of the other errands I had and because I had just spent 6 months in unpleasant sandy areas in uniform, I dressed up. Heels, dress slacks, silk blues, well-tailored jacket, hair up in a bun. Dressed like that, I dropped my truck off, agreed that I needed the tires balanced, and that was it, and was told that it would be about an hour. Just awesome. I was about to walk off to go to my other errands down the block when I noticed through that big glass window the tire places have that they were already pulling my truck into the bay, so I decided to wait and see. And being the interested person that I am, I watched as 2 guys started to pull my tires off my truck and a third, the man who had taken my keys and agreed that I was only asking for my tires to be balanced, sat in the driver's seat jotting down notes on a little notepad. After about 10 minutes, the third guy with the notepad came back inside and walked over to me and explained that during his free assessment of my vehicle, he found a lot of safety issues that needed to be corrected. Like what? I asked him. Well, it's like this, he responded. And then proceeded to rattle off a list of 10 or 12 items from his notepad that he had noticed in his free assessment. The fan belt needs replacement, overdue for oil change and radiator flush, fuel and oil filters are shot and have to be replaced, brake pads are shot and have to be replaced, alignment is totally out of whack and ruined my tires, which now have to be replaced instead of just balanced. Everything on his list were things I had just checked and or replaced. He ended with this: "I'm really sorry, miss, but your vehicle is one big safety problem. I cannot release it to you to drive in the condition it's currently in." Keep in mind, not only had I just done all this work, most of it on his list, but he had never once opened the hood of my truck. You cannot look at the majority of what I have listed here or that he had on his list without opening the hood of the vehicle. After a moment of consideration, I asked him how much he thought it would be to make it roadworthy. He screwed up his face and did some math in his little notebook. "A rough estimate?" $3,700, but it could cost more because your vehicle is technically an import and the parts can be hard to find. I asked to speak with the manager and was told that the manager was out for the day. I then responded with, so you're telling me that unless I get $3,700 worth of work done on my vehicle, you cannot release my vehicle to me, the rightful owner, because it is not safe or roadworthy? Yes. He continued on with this babble of apologies and explanations in a sly, fakely apologetic, condescending tone, and asked if there was anyone I could consult with about a repair this large or if there was anyone who could give me a ride home. I asked him to give me a couple of minutes and walked out into the parking lot and got on my phone out of earshot from him or his mechanics who were still balancing my tires. I then got promptly on the phone with the sheriff's department. When I explained everything to the officer, he promised to be out in 15 minutes to help me clear the matter up. I walked back inside and told that mechanic with the sweetest smile I could conjure that I would have someone here presently to help me with the matter. I also asked him for the list of repairs needed along with his quote so I could discuss it with my friend who would be arriving shortly. He happily handed me the evidence to his arrest and even signed his name on it for me so that I could get in contact with him if I needed more than today to consider the repairs and costs. The cherry on top of the whole thing was the absent manager walked in just in time to see the employee get handcuffed and I got a free tire balance service because of what the now former employee tried to pull. And wow, Ripe Stars, I gotta say, that was absolutely brilliant what the OP has done in this story. And by the way, Ripe Stars, I'm really curious, have you ever gotten scammed when it comes to dealing with mechanics in regards to your vehicle? Personally, I don't really feel I've ever been scammed simply because all the repair stuff is so cheap here in Thailand. I mean, they might overcharge you, so to say, maybe a few dollars here and there, but that's pretty much it. So if you have any stories to tell, please let us know in the comments. Neighbor was constantly speeding in the neighborhood. We put his car on a tree with a crane. My name is Taryn and my neighbors and I hatched one of the greatest ideas ever when we all finally grew sick and tired of one reckless teen driving like a psychopath up and down our streets. We live in a small town of about 1,000 people. Many of us know each other from the years of growing up with the same families for generations. I live in a house with my grandma and mother in a quiet area of town with a longish road that runs throughout the neighborhood. We have many children and young people that live on my street. It's a popular area for kids wanting to ride bikes or skateboards because it is long and straight. Then one day, some teenager decided that he would make it his personal drag strip for his old souped-up Honda. The kid's name was Dustin and I used to babysit him when he was little. He was always a bit of a troublemaker, not liking to listen and enjoying all things that were dangerous or risky. The first thing that drew my attention to Dustin's behavior was the speeding up and down the street in his loud car at all hours of the day. But this made me realize what other things he was getting into. I found out through a friend of my grandmother's that Dustin's mother had not been home much because she had been staying with her boyfriend, basically giving the teenager free room to do what he wanted. We lived across the street from him, so I started paying more attention. I noticed that Dustin was having parties with dozens of other teens several days a week, not even always on weekends. I'm not even sure if he was attending school, to be honest. My grandmother could not sleep one night because of the loud music that he was playing. The kids' friends were throwing bottles and setting off some firecrackers, causing commotion till the early hours of the morning. One night, during a particularly loud party, where a fight broke out, a neighbor called the police, finally fed up with all the rowdy weekends. The teens all ran and somehow Dustin managed to get off the hook. Dustin and his friends did not really slow down on their antics and continued to keep the neighborhood up with the parties. We started to grow suspicious that he was also dealing drugs. At this point he had dropped out of high school and was barely a legal adult. I actually felt bad for him, like Dustin was a good kid who probably just needed help. The drug dealing was discreet at first, but eventually I started to notice that the number of cars coming and going were increasing. Not to mention, the people driving to his house would speed up and down the streets. It was honestly dangerous. One day, they almost hit a few children who were trying to play ball outside. I was thinking about mixing some concrete and making my own speed bumps, which, by the way, Ripe Stars, I gotta say, is an absolutely brilliant idea in this situation. However, I'm also not really sure if that is legal in the first place. Probably not. Anyway, Dustin's direct neighbor was an elderly woman named Anne. She had lived here for over 40 years and was always a darling lady. I visit her once a week or so to bring her food and see if she needs anything from the store while I am out. She used to watch me and my little sister when we were kids and our mom had to work late. She was a single mom. I went to her place to do her weekly grocery run and I noticed a ridiculous amount of trash and broken glass on her side of the property. It looked as if Dustin had not put his trash on the curb for weeks and now it was spilling over onto her yard. There was also a large scorch mark going up the siding of Dustin's house. Smelly, burnt trash was sitting underneath it. Anne's son was at the house. He does not live there but comes by frequently to spend time with her. He held a bag of peas up to the left side of his face and was hovering over him worriedly. When I asked what happened, Tony, Anne's son, said that when he tried to talk to Dustin about the trash in his mother's yard, he became belligerent and punched him. Tony was talking about how he was going to sue Dustin if he did not clear up the trash and apologize for hitting him. Anne seemed genuinely upset, more upset than I had ever seen her. She started telling me how she was sick of everything with Dustin, that he was keeping her up at night, that one of his friends had tried to break into her house when he was drunk and forgot which ones was Dustin's. Apparently, they were burning trash the other night and almost caught his house on fire. That must be where the scorch mark came from. I look over and see Anne's eyes full of tears, fighting to let them fall. I needed to do something. I was pretty pissed at this point. Not only was I sick of this, but Anne was suffering. Plus, I had talked with several others on the street and they were just as tired of the drag racing, parties and broken bottles in the road. I marched over to Dustin's house, past bags of trash and broken bottles and banged on the door. It took several minutes and more times of banging before he finally answered. He was shirtless and pale with bloodshot eyes and an old smell of liquor on his breath. He is not even old enough to buy alcohol, so he must have a friend get it from him. Dustin narrowed his eyes at me. I can see him trying to remember who I am. He finally says, "What do you want, Taryn?" He sighs. "If this is about the trash, I'm going to get rid of it." Surprised me a little. I'm not his mom. I did not know why he was acting like I was. "Dustin, we need to talk about more than just the trash." He stood in the doorway with one of his arms holding him up as if he was too weak to just stand there on his own. He groans and rolls his eyes. "No thanks, I don't need another mom." Ha! That's funny, I thought. He goes to shut the door on me and I stick my foot in the way, keeping it open. "Hey, this is about Anne. Well, and the rest of the neighborhood." I pry the door open the rest of the way. "Frankly, we are sick of you. The drag racing, the parties, the drug dealing, all of it needs to stop." He laughed condescendingly. "You cannot tell me what to do." He tries to shut the door again, but I keep my foot in the way. "You can have off with this. Get off my property." He reached out and shoved me and made me lose my balance. I shouted profanities at him through the door and told him that if he kept it up, there would be some kind of hell to pay. I know it sounds silly, but I really needed to find a way to stop this kid before he kills someone. As I was walking back to my house, I realized one of the neighbors that lives on the end of the street has a large crane. How funny would it be if Dustin just happened to find his car up in a tree one morning? That is when I hatched my plan. I spoke with Eric, the guy with the crane, and started the process of putting Dustin in his place. Eric was completely on board. He was just as sick of everything as the rest of us. He told me that his granddaughter was riding her bike down the street one day and that Dustin's friend almost hit her when he was speeding away from his house. That night, Eric, his son and I got to work. We ended up hoisting his beat-up Honda on top of a dead old tree. It stayed up perfectly, as if a giant had just picked it up and set it there. It was absolutely amazing and honestly hilarious. I waited at my window all day, wanting to see what Dustin did when he realized that his car was missing. It was not that far away either. All he had to do was walk onto the street and look about 30 yards down and see his precious car precariously in a tree. My wait was worthwhile. His reaction was golden. He was speechless, and then he started shouting profanities and other incoherent words. Dustin must have called the police because they showed up a few hours later to take his statement about the stolen car. The cops laughed too when they saw it. Eventually the news and newspaper came by to take pictures and see what happened with the troublemaking kid's car in a tree. The car ended up being removed from the tree, and Dustin's behavior was quick to improve after that. He at least stopped driving like an idiot, and there were no more friends speeding down the street. Trash was cleaned up from his and Anne's yard as well. It was a few months later that a knock came at my front door. It was shockingly Dustin. He seemed much more put together than he was the last time I saw him face to face. He apologized for everything and said that he has started picking up some groceries for Anne. But he leaves them on the porch because he is too embarrassed to tell her that he was sorry for everything. I told him that it was nice of him to say sorry and that he should do the same with Anne. I think that she would forgive him. Apparently sticking the boy's car in a tree was a helpful reality check. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I gotta say, if I would have been in this situation as OP, putting this kid's car on a tree would definitely not have been the first thought that would have come to my mind. However, I gotta admit, it is pretty genius, and seemingly it worked really well. If you would have been in OP's shoes, would you have done something different? Or maybe did you have any better ideas? Let us know in the comments, and while you're at it, I would really appreciate it if you could also like the video, because that would help my channel tremendously. Thank you so much in advance.